I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today is Carole, and we're going to be talking about her new book, Buyer First: Grow Your Business with Collaborative Selling. So Carole, I always give a little. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And we're going to dig in and talk about it. I mean, it's a real book positioned for new business people maybe new into sales. You've just started your business and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, before we get into talk about it, where can people find you?
Well, obviously on LinkedIn. And if you can't find me on LinkedIn, then I haven't been doing my job right. But you can also find me on my website, carolmahoney.com, and my corporate training website, which is unboundgrowth.com.
And we can get this on Amazon. Is it worldwide, or is it available in the UK now?
It is actually, as of today, October 16th, it is available for print in the UK. The digital versions are also available. So if you like to listen to your books, that is available. If you like to have a Kindle copy for note-taking, that's available. I like to be able to take sticky notes and highlighters to my physical books. And so I've written it in a way that you can actually do the work in the book itself too.
You have, and you've got lots of bits where you can write up, because you actually set a whole load of exercises for people, don't you?
I do. And this is the thing that I wanted for people. So, I mean, it's primarily for business owners, entrepreneurs who need to sell. And most of us have tried everything, every tip, every trick, every hack to try to get more customers. And we hit this wall and we get frustrated because it doesn't seem to work for us in our businesses the same way it works for everyone else in all of the corporate sales training books. And the reason is we don't understand our mindsets about sales and how they're getting in the way. And so the exercises are designed to help you to start to get some self-awareness around your sales beliefs and how they're going to impact you in your conversations.
Yeah. And I mean, you tell a lovely story about how you got into sales because like lots of people, you left an organization and you wanted to set up your own company, and then you suddenly realized you needed to sell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And often people, when they ask me, well, how did you get into sales? My typical reply is kicking and screaming the entire way, dragging my nails as I went. And when I graduated college with a degree in marketing and business, when my college advisor asked me about sales positions, I said, if it says sales anywhere in that job description, then you can rule it out for me. And so when I was asked to leave my last corporate company because of a layoff during the last Great Recession, I'd always planned on starting my own business. It was in my DNA. And at that point, I thought I had a 5-year plan in place that I was working towards. Layoff happened. My 5-year plan became a 6-month plan. And in none of those plans did I think of myself as a salesperson. And it was the thing that got in my way of growing my business every single time. And I had to go through a lot of different things to learn that selling isn't something we do to others, it's something we do with them. And there are specific beliefs and mindsets that we have in our everyday lives that get in the way of us being able to do that. But none of the books are talking about it. They're talking about the tactics, not the mindsets, and ways to actively start changing those while adopting the right techniques that buyers actually value.
Yeah, I've read a lot of sales books, and they do, and it's very tactic, and I've read, there gets to a point when sales books they actually start saying the same thing.
Right.
I have particular beliefs about how sales works and how it doesn't work. And I like the particular story about you in the car cold calling with the kids in the back.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And every time the kids and I get together, it's one of those conversations that always comes up that everybody gets to laugh at mom about. I had hired a business coach who told me that I needed to make cold calls and that I had to get over my fear of doing that. And when I was driving my kids to school every day, it was a 45-minute drive through the country to get there. And I thought, well, if I'm going to spend an hour and a half on the call, I'm going to make my cold calls as I go. I think also, too, the idea of driving while calling also distracted me from the thought that I was making these cold calls. And all the way there, all the way back, I'm making these calls. And it's snowing outside at this point. I had to pick my kids up because of a snowstorm. And as we're driving up the hill to our house, now understand, I live in the middle of the country. We don't have plows that come through on a regular basis. So there's a good 6 to 8 inches of snow on the ground at this point. And it's icy. And I'm driving up this hill with the dog in the back and the kids, making my calls, and all of a sudden the worst possible thing happened. somebody actually answered the phone.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh crap. And I like, I'm giving my kids this look, the mom look, like, quiet, someone's on the phone, mom's having a call. And I'm like, hey, I'm Carole Mahoney. I run this marketing agency and we help everybody from SEO and blah, 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 blah. And I'm giving my pitch and the guy's like, yeah, I don't have a website. I don't need your services. And as I start to go into, well, that's okay. We do websites too. All of a sudden I hear my kids in the back going, mom, mom, mom. And the dog is barking. And I realized that we started to slide down the hill and sideways instead of going up the hill. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to have to call you right back. And my kids are like, what in the world are you doing? And they would mock me whenever I would make calls. They go into this little voice and say, oh, my name's Carole Mahoney. And they start doing my cold calls for me. But it was like at that moment where I'm like, I'm hating what I'm doing. I'm not getting the results. I'm obviously putting my kids in danger in the car trying to get this done. And I just felt like I was beating my head against that wall. But I did the things that I hated to do in the way that I thought I needed to do them because I was desperate to pay my bills and make my business a success. And I think what happens to a lot of business owners, we do what we think we need to do. And we look to, these people who we think are successful salespeople and how they do it. And when we try to mimic those things and it doesn't work for us, we're like, I'm just not a good salesperson.
Because I think that what often we think with salesperson is we see this view on TV or whatever, which is this person that is extrovert. They're always talking. If you think about the Glenn Ross, they're manipulative. That's a very dark movie, but that's like, this is, always be closing, all of those things. So when was it that you actually realized what sales was about?
It was when I had to start looking for a job. And I was at that point where I was rock bottom in my business. I needed to pay the bills. And I thought, maybe I just need to find a job at this point. The economy had started to pick back up again. And, I can do this on the side as I had planned to do and go back to what my original 5-year plan was. And so my sister had introduced me to her boss, who was looking for a content marketing director for a local kind of publication. And, I'm sitting in the interview. I really need this job. And Jack, who is the boss of my sister, said, it's between you and one other person. I'm having a really hard time making this decision. What would you do if you were me? Now, the first thought in my head was, well, I would hire me because I'm needing this job. And then I started to think about, now this all happened within a matter of seconds. I started to think, yeah, but if I'm not the right person for this job and this doesn't work out, how's that going to reflect back on my sister? And suddenly the impulse that I had to make it about me became, how do I not make this about me? And so I asked him a question, just a simple question. What's the most important aspect of this job for you? Because that's how I would know if I was the right fit, if I could do that thing. And when he told me it was like going to sporting events and having to be part of that whole experience and working with all the vendors, and I was like, yeah, that's not my thing. And I know the other person that he was looking to hire, and I know that was their thing. And I told him, you would be better off hiring so-and-so because they have done this before, whereas I have not. And I can probably find something else that's a better fit. And then he said, I am so thankful and grateful for you to making this decision easier for me. And I'm going to find out who else needs your services because I know some other people that might need some help with their own marketing in their businesses. Now, that had never happened before at the end of any sales conversation. I thought, and it took me a little while to kind of process it. And later on, when I told my husband that I didn't get the job, but I told him about this part of the conversation, he said, well, maybe you need to just stop selling people in order to sell something.
Yes.
And I was like, why? Are you so much smarter than I am right now? But it took me a little while, and it took me some digging into the psychology of how our beliefs and mindsets get in the way of us doing some of the, even learning new habits, but then also how we execute those things. I came across this one psychological sort of study of the theory of reasoned action and a theory of planned behavior. And it simply states that how we think about a particular action or behavior is going to influence how we do it or if we do it. And what we model our behaviors after what we consider to be normal. So what our normal perception of what a salesperson is, which, by the way, 7 out of 10 of us still think of as that used car salesperson image.
Yep.
That's what we think we have to become to be successful in sales. And so we've perpetuated this cycle that we even hate ourselves.
Yes.
As I started digging into some of these things, I started to see and understand and realize that's why that keeps happening to me. Okay, how do I change it now? And so then I went down this path of how do I start changing these own mindsets and beliefs in myself? And then as I started to go through that process, kind of fell in love with sales. And that was the last thing that I expected. And then I call it my conversion to the dark side of sales, where I started to see the same issues that I was having in my sales. I was seeing it in my clients. We were delivering marketing leads that they couldn't close because they didn't know how to relate to today's internet educated buyer,
Yep.
who's going through their journey part of the way completely without them, but they're still using those 1980s and 1990 tactics where they're expecting people to, submit to our Sandler submarine and give us your credit card.
Yes.
And it doesn't work that way anymore.
No, it doesn't. No.
And so that's why I started doing sales coaching and training, and why I wanted to write this book, because we're now at a place where we were in a very similar place back in our last Great Recession, where millions of people have left their corporate jobs. Millions of them have decided to stay trying to run their own businesses. And they're trying to figure out, do I go get a job or do I figure out how to make this work? And that's why I wanted to write this for them, because that's who I was 20 years ago. And this book didn't exist then. And it still didn't exist till now.
Yes. And I agree. And you mentioned, and you get Daniel Pink is actually one of the people that actually has made a trying to think of an
endorsement.
He's in the front. He's given you a quote.
Yeah.
And really, what this book does is it takes Daniel Pink's book, which is You've Got to Sell and It's Okay, and actually gives you a mechanism with which to do that, which is to, in a way, to start selling is you got to stop selling. Because people hate it. I mean, there's what happens is whenever anybody pitches to you, you end up with a fight or flight reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, clearly not what you want, you don't want your customers to do. So from I was going to say is that the figures that we're seeing is that a year ago there was, let me get this right. There was one person going for 5 jobs. This is the figures for the UK. It's going to be pretty similar for the US. Now there's 5 people going for 1 job.
Yep.
And always one of the things that we've run a number of podcasts about how to get a job. And one of the feedback I often get is, because I always say to it, if you're in sales, your job about getting a job is actually, it's a sale.
Exactly.
And you actually run it as if it was a sale. It's not something different because you're selling yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that at that point, what you found was that actually in selling yourself in a role, that was what sales was about.
Yeah, exactly. And there was actually a point as I was going through the job hunt that I realized, I think that was one of the realizations that I had after my conversations with Jack. As I was going through each process, I was researching the company, the person who I was about to talk to, formulating what are the questions. I'm like, this is no different than a sales process. So if I'm going to go through all this work to find a job, maybe I should divert those energies to finding clients in using this new tactic in this new way. And that's when I started to see the growth that I'd always hoped for and realized there was something deeper going on here.
You talk in your book about following the new golden rule. What do you mean by that?
This is actually a line that I had read in Jeffrey and Brian Eisenberg's book, Waiting for Your Cat to Bark. And I think that actually it originates from the Wizard of Id. And what it basically is saying is that they who have the gold make the rules. Like, we've known the golden rule to be do unto others as you would have done unto you. But what it really is that the people who have the money are the ones that are making the rules, and that is our buyer. And so the new golden rule is buyers are the ones that make the rules. They're the ones that determine what value is and not us. And so following the new golden rule is really the foundation for having a collaborative approach to your sales process that aligns and incorporates the buying process into that. I think so often, and I've been working with Mark Roberge at Harvard Business School. They have such an excellent sales training program right now, which I mentioned in the book. And it's one of the most highly sought after courses, actually, I think, in the business school, with a long waiting list. And one of the things that he says in the course is that we need to stop designing our sales processes from the inside out, from the inside of the company, and then pushing that out to our buyers, but instead design processes that are from the outside in. And it's great, except the challenge is that most of our salespeople and business owners in their sales trainings haven't learned how to do that. How do I understand my buyer? How do I collaborate with my buyer? And what's getting in their way is their own beliefs, because it's like trying to see through a stained glass window.
Yeah, there are products that can be sold by going up to people and pitching to people, and I understand that. But the vast majority of products require an element of conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and also articulating and having that conversation between the client, between the buyer and the seller.
Yeah.
And I think so many people are still. I think we've gone back to selling feature function, because we've gone back to the demo of, we're going to do a demo and it's feature function. And if you say and we're back to this thing that if we say enough features and functions, at some point you'll go, okay, you've now given me enough features and functions where I could actually use, so I'll buy it.
Yeah. And actually what the research shows that I included in the book is that it's not feature function or value propositions or corporate speak that actually gets people's attention, but it's the ability to use telling details, the words of our buyer and how they have phrased those, and then tying the features to that particular thing and giving it credibility by quantifying it. And what happens though is in order to get to those telling details, as it's called, then we need to have really good collaborative conversations where we're uncovering this kinds of information, because otherwise you're going on your assumptions, and that's when it becomes a pitch.
Yes. So you also talk in the book about the importance of mindset. Talk us through that.
Well, in the book, what I'm trying to do is take a cognitive behavioral approach to sales performance. When I'm working with my clients, a lot of the work that I'm doing is I'm actually trying to answer 3 questions. And I believe these come from Dave Curlin at Objective Management Group. The first one being, do they know what to do? Do they know what is the next step or the question to ask or the way to handle a particular situation? Can they do it? Do they have the confidence and then the practice and the reps that they've done so that they know they can actually execute on this? But then the third question and final question, which is really the thing that hinges everything else on, is will they do it in the moment they need to? I mean, how many times have you heard, or I have heard, where a sales manager or leader has their team go through a training program, and the first thing that they say 6 months later is that they didn't stick. Like, the training's not sticking. They're not getting it. I don't understand why they're not doing what they know they need to do in a call after you've reviewed it with them. And it's because our mindsets towards the action or the beliefs that we have about it are getting in our way. So for example, there's 5 different mindsets that I evaluate using Objective Management Group's data. And out of those 5, there's 3 that are the most common. One of them is supportive. Supportive beliefs influence everything, but one of the most common ones is a non-supportive buy cycle. How you buy something, how you make your decisions, is how you expect your buyers to do the same things. So when you believe, for example, that if they think it over, they're going to eventually buy from me, that lengthens your sales cycles, and we all know what happens when they're going to think it over. Or another common one is what I call the need for approval. Very basic human emotion is that you want validation from others to know that you're good, that you're smart, that you're in the right place. Like when we were children, we looked to our parents to say, oh my gosh, am I doing the right thing? And then our parents nodded their approval. But when we get into sales situations and we believe that people need to like us in order to buy from us, then we don't ask tough questions because we don't want to upset them. That might upset the deal. They might not like us, then they might not buy from us. And the fact is that buyers are demanding that we ask them the tough questions that are going to get them to think differently about what they don't know. And then one of the third most common one is the emotional involvement, the happy ears that we get when we get excited of buying signals, or the frantic anxiety that we get when we hear objections that we don't know how to handle. And we think, I need to tell them what they need to do. I need to tell them why they need to buy. Or I'm really worried about how this is going to impact my quota or my commission. And we're suddenly checked out and we're not actively listening to the other person. And buyers can sense that like a fox in a hen house. They know exactly when you've checked out, when you're thinking in your head, and you're going through your checklist, because they don't feel heard or listened to, which is the number one complaint that buyers have of salespeople today.
Always. And I think that, sellers don't give. I was sent a spam email last week. I think it's the first one that's been created by some sort of AI.
Okay.
Scrape the data probably from either our website. I think it's from our website.
Mm-hmm.
And it's factually incorrect. You can see a mile away. I can from it's, it is not, it's but the person selling personalized email marketing services,
Mhm.
but you can see this is not authentic.
and 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 that's what buyers are demanding, is that sense of authenticity. Like,
Yes.
if there's one thing that I hope people take away from this book, is that the best thing that you can do is say, no, I don't think this is a good fit for you. That's essentially what I said to Jack in my job interview, that made me realize this is how you build trust. It's
Yes.
not by, and that's the other thing that we get when we get emotionally involved and we need the approval of others. We say yes to everything that they want. You can't trust the person who always says yes. We trust the person that says no, even if it's to their own detriment.
Yes. Carole, thank you so much for coming on and talking about your book, Buyer First. Really enjoyed it, and I would always I recommend it for anybody that is a solo entrepreneur starting a job that needs to be selling. It's a really good first step, and I love the exercises. I mean, it's not often when you get an author that says, "Right, stop reading."
Do this, yeah.
Do this, and they're all things that where you need to actually spend time thinking, and that's really excellent. So,
yeah.
Thank you so much, and it really is a great book as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on, Tim. This was a lot of fun.
You're welcome. And so remind people where they can get hold of you.
So definitely reach out to me on LinkedIn. Let me know that you saw me here with Tim. Any questions that you have, I'm always happy to answer and connect. Let me know that you're a human, though, not an AI robot. And then also, if you have any other questions, for anyone who does buy the book through this year, we're offering, actually this Thursday, we're doing our next one, sort of a book club, kind of a Q&A. Any questions that you have, I'm going to answer live. And then also you can find me on my website at Unbound Growth, or at carolemahoney.com for the book and the links to sign up for the monthly course.
And I can get the book on Amazon.com.
Yes, you can. And Barnes & Noble, and or your local bookstore, because there's a link for you to be able to request it there too.
Brilliant. Okay. Carole, thank you so much for coming on and talking about it.